heats up in earnest, the frontrunner is firmly in the lead in every national poll, including wide margins in two brand new online polls out today. One shows him topping the field at 29%. What is his path to victory?
And we're going to fight in Massachusetts and in New Hampshire. And we're going to fight in Iowa. And we're going to fight in, I'll tell you what, South Carolina, 30% and more. South Carolina is amazing. The way I look at it, Iowa, so great, incredible people. New Hampshire, so great, incredible people. Winning there, winning in South Carolina. Maybe at some point people are just going to give up. I don't know.
So let's begin with our breaking news. Donald Trump one-on-one, and the candidate joins me now on the phone. Hello, Mr. Trump. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Don.
Hey, let's get right to business because you have been a very busy man, and let's talk about you and Jeb Bush have been going back and forth. You put out an Instagram video attacking Jeb Bush on immigration on Monday. He is now hit back with a new video of his own calling you out as a liberal. I want to play part of it because I want you to respond, but let's listen to it first.
Hillary Clinton, I think, is a terrific woman. I mean, I'm a little biased because I've known her for years.
Yeah, I know her very well. She's very talented. And
I live in New York. She lives in New York. And I've known her and her husband for years, and I really like them both a lot.
Do you identify more as a Democrat or a Republican?
Well, you'd be shocked if I said that in many cases I probably identify more as a Democrat.
So basically, Jeb Bush is saying that you're not a conservative Republican, and he's using your words to show that. You just released another video. Let's watch it, and then we'll talk about it.
We recognize the commitment of someone who has devoted her life to public service. I want to say thank you to both Secretary Clinton and to President Clinton.
What does that make Hillary Clinton to the Bush family? My sister-in-law.
What do you think of that? Do you take issue with Jeb Bush with that?
Well, look, when he did his rather long commercial, don't forget he's getting all of this money from people that are lobbyists and, tough group of people. I know all of them, and they want him to do something, and he should do something because he's got to fight back, and he's way down in the polls, and he's got to. But I was described in one of the magazines as a world-class businessman. So as a world-class businessman, I knew everybody. I had to be friendly with everybody. When you're doing business in this country, you want to be friendly with Clinton and you want to be friendly with everybody. And I would help people and I would get along with people, and that's part of my life. To my company, to my family, I owe that to everybody. So I would do that. I would do it well as anybody. And, I was part of the groups that would contribute to a guy like Jeb Bush, and who's a nice guy, by the way, but to Jeb Bush and to everybody else. And when Jeb is paying for these ads by the lobbyists and by the special interests and by his donors, and they want him to do something like this. But I would get along with Hillary. I'd get along with Bill Clinton. I'd get along with everybody. Now I'm in a different world. I'm in the world of politics. I'm sort of a politician, I guess you would say. And as you can see from the polls, we're doing well because people are tired of politics as such. And, one other thing I'll say, because he mentions the fact that I was at one point a Democrat. Well, in New York City, everybody was a Democrat, practically. If you run for city council, if you run for political office, whoever wins the Democrat primary is automatically, there was almost no election because the Republicans hardly exist in New York City. Well, that's where I was. If you look at Ronald Reagan, he was a Democrat. He was actually, Don, he was a Democrat with a very liberal, or at least a pretty liberal bent, and he became a Republican with a somewhat conservative, I wouldn't say very, but he was a conservative Republican.
But Mr. Trump, that's the first time I've ever heard of you, call yourself a politician, refer to yourself as a politician. And, did you ever consider yourself a Democrat?
I hate to do it. But I guess when you're running for office, I hate the term politician as it relates to myself. I've never been. I've only been a politician for 3 months. But, I guess that's what I am right now, unfortunately.
Well, were you a Democrat at that point?
It's not going to be politics as usual.
Were you a Democrat at that point when you said that?
Well, at one point I was a Democrat, and for a period of time, and over the years, as Ronald Reagan changed, I also changed. I became much more conservative. I also became a Republican.
So your positions have changed. You have conservative positions now, you believe?
Oh, my positions have changed a lot, absolutely, over the years.
Okay.
As they have with Ronald Reagan done, as they have with many people. I mean, you change, and some people go the other way. They become more liberal, although generally I found people tend to become a little bit more conservative.
Okay.
But But now I am actually a politician, whether I like it or not.
Okay, I want to get to those polls, but one quick thing before we get to the polls, because I think the polls are important. One more short excerpt. This is from Jeb's ad, because I want to give you a chance to respond to this as well. Here it is.
I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa.
The question is that because of the Iowa polls, that you're leading in the polls, right? And there are some polls that are saying that you're tied with Ben Carson. Are you worried that people there might see this as a bit of an insult, that New York is not the same as Iowa?
No, I don't mean it as an insult. I think the values of the people in Iowa are incredible, but it is somewhat different when you're living in this huge, metropolis, this huge city. The views have a tendency to be somewhat different. I mean, all you have to do is look at voter profiles. But my relationship with the people of Iowa has been great. Every time I go to Iowa, I have the most incredible receptions. And that goes, in all fairness, New Hampshire, where we had, as you saw, tremendous turnouts, and Iowa have tremendous turnouts, South Carolina. The other day we were in 2 weeks ago, we were in Alabama. We had 30,000 people in a stadium. The turnouts have been absolutely tremendous. And
I saw that. I saw that. Honestly, though, when you saw that many people, what did you think?
Well, I think it was a great tribute to what we're all saying. We want to make our country great again. These are people that are really wanting to make this country great. They hate to see what's going on, whether it's the horrible deal with Iran, that a baby could negotiate a better deal than that. And I like the idea of a deal, but they should have doubled up the sanctions for another couple of months, and they would have come to the table, and they would have been begging to make a good deal. We don't get our prisoners back. They have 24-day inspections. There's something in the Iran deal that people, I don't think, really understand or know about, and nobody's able to explain it, that if somebody attacks Iran, we have to come to their defense. And I'm saying, does that include Israel? And most people say yes. They don't have an exclusion for Israel. So if Israel attacks Iran according to that deal, I believe the way it reads, unless they have a codicil or they have something to it, that we have to fight with Iran against Israel. Now, you tell me. I mean, you're the one that does this professionally for a living. What does this agreement say? If that's the case, I think it's unsignable. How can you possibly sign such a thing?
Let's talk about. You said it was a tribute to people wanting to take their country back, because I know you've heard the criticism that phrase was used with Nixon, and people out there are saying it is a dog whistle to there's some sort of racist intent behind it. Can you please respond to that?
No, I think the phrase that they're talking about is the word silent majority. When you have the word silent majority, to me, it's just a very obvious phrase. There is a silent majority out there that actually are becoming much less silent, because when you look at Iowa and the crowds I have, and those people are going wild with enthusiasm. And you look at New Hampshire, it's the same thing. And you looked at that football stadium with 30,000 people, they are not so silent anymore. They're angry and they're upset, Don, with what's going on, and they don't like what's happening with our trade deals. They don't like what's happening on the border. They don't like, as I said, what's happening with Iran and that horrible deal that was made by a bunch of babies. I mean, these are people that don't know the first thing about negotiation, and how a deal like that can get approved. It's inconceivable. We're giving them $150 billion plus.
Yeah.
And nobody can understand why we can't negotiate a far better deal than that. And I cannot understand that, because I think that's negotiating 101. There's no way that deal should be approved. If it is approved, it's going to be the scourge on our nation. And by the way, a disaster for Israel.
Yeah.
A complete disaster for Israel.
Okay, let's talk about the polls, because I know those are important to you. We just noted that Ben Carson is running neck and neck in one poll, 23% in the latest Iowa poll. Are you surprised by this poll and his seeming popularity?
Well, I was a little bit surprised to see it. I've been leading in Iowa by a lot. I had a bigger surge than anybody, even Ben, because, when I was first done, as you saw, I think before I announced, I was at, a sort of a low number because nobody thought I was going to run. And then when I did announce, I had the biggest surge of all, as you call it, in your professional business, the surge. And I went up to 23. And Ben's doing nicely too. I like Ben. I think Ben's a nice person. I've met him numerous times, and I like him.
Are you going to go after him like you've been going after Jed and Hillary now that he is doing
Well,
better?
I usually go after people. I'm more of a counterpuncher, as they would say in the boxing world. I tend to be, Jeb went after me, and if you know, Perry went after me, and I went after him, and Rand Paul, for some reason, out of the blue, came after me, and I went after him, and the other one, I guess, would be Lindsey Graham. I thought these people were all fine, and they came after me, and then I had to go after them, and perhaps I did a better job than they did. But they all went down, and they went down big league. Ben and I have gotten to know each other over the years. I like him, and I don't know. I can't tell you what's going to happen because I really don't know. Politics is a very strange thing and a very strange place that you end up in. But I can tell you that he's somebody that I like on a personal basis.
And when we come right back, I'm going to ask Donald Trump about his closed-door meeting today with the top Hispanic leader and why he thinks a lot of Democrats will vote for him. Donald Trump's surge shows no sign of tapering off. The mogul who wants to be your next president, topping all the national polls. You have turned your favorability numbers around. With the majority having a positive view now, do you worry that the increased negative attacks on you by Jeb Bush and by others, that they may turn that back? Because, again, your favorability numbers are up.
Well, it was sort of an amazing thing. They said in the poll, in that same poll that you're quoting, which I think was at 23%, they said that it was one of the biggest turnarounds of favorability that this pollster, who's highly respected, has ever seen.
What do you think that is?
I think when people hear me speak, I think they realize I love the country. I'm good at what I do. I will not let China, Japan, Mexico, both at the border and at trade, outsmart us and take advantage of us. I mean, we're going to be creating jobs in this country. They see it. I'm very big into the vets. I'm going to take care of our vets, and I'm going to rebuild our military. We're going to make it great again and strong again, and nobody's going to mess with us. And not a military that we're going to want to use. If you make it strong and really strong, nobody's going to want to mess with us. And that's sort of the expression I've been using. And we're going to end Obamacare, and we're going to do something far better than Obamacare. So, and people see what's happening with Obamacare. You look at your premiums, they're going up, they're going through the roof. And look at the deductibles on insurance now. I mean, unless you die, you can't, people can be gravely ill and they're never going to get to the deductible. So, a lot of bad things are happening in the country, and I'll turn them around. So when I look at that, and when people hear me speak, in this case it was Iowa, the pollster actually said it's one of the greatest. He said, I think he said it's the greatest turnaround he's ever seen. And hey, it's one of those things. I'm very honored by it.
But you said that you're going to do something about immigration. You said that you would, the 11 million undocumented immigrants, that you would like to somehow deport them. That's one group where your poll numbers have not been so favorable among Hispanics. And I know that you met privately with the head of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce today.
I did.
Tell me about that meeting. What did you discuss? Was it tense?
Well, he was a terrific person, actually, and we had a very nice meeting. And it worked out. I think, we had a very good understanding. I told him all my life I've had great relationship with the Hispanics, and I've employed tens of thousands over my career, and I have thousands working for me, and they're great people. They're fantastic people. And this has nothing to do with Hispanic. This has to do with stopping illegal immigration. They may come from the Middle East. They may come from lots of other people. But the southern border is totally porous, and you can't have that. If you're going to have a country, you can't have that. And we had a great conversation, and it'll continue. It was really very good. Javier, he came up, and we had a really good conversation. And, in one of the polls that just came out, I don't know if you saw it, but I just won the Hispanic vote in terms of the poll. I won it.
Yeah, I have not seen that.
That's sitting right in front of you, I guess. And in another one, I just won in Nevada, the Hispanic vote. And I think I'm going to win with Hispanics, and a lot of people sort of smile when they say that, but actually the people that live here, Hispanics that are legal, that came in through the long, hard process, they absolutely have a great feeling about me, and I have a great feeling about them.
But it's been a long.
It has to be legal immigration, not illegal immigration.
But Mr. Trump, it's been a long, I would say a hard slog with Hispanics because the comments that you made initially about Mexico sending its.
Well, that's because I was misquoted by the press. I mean, the press was misquoting me, and you know that, Don, all over the place. And frankly, Had I not been in this race, as an example, you wouldn't even be talking right now about illegal immigration. It wasn't something that was high on the agenda. And now they are talking about it big league. Now, you had things happen after I announced and after I brought it to the fore, and one of the things was Kate, who was beautiful Kate, killed in San Francisco. Other people killed. Even the woman 2 weeks ago in California who was 66-year-old veteran who was raped and killed and tortured and everything else by an illegal immigrant, and 66-year-old veteran. And a lot of things have happened, and they see the kind of crime that we're talking about. And I've had people in your profession quietly apologize to me for what happened, because that first 2 weeks for me was not pleasant, Don, frankly.
I can only imagine, because, again, you said you were taken out of context because you said that
totally out of context,
that Mexico sends the people over. But if you could go back, would you amend those statements? Would you say them more clearly?
No, because I think in the end, no, I don't think so, because in the end, I'm now being quoted correctly, and we're talking about illegal immigration.
Yeah.
And again, if I wasn't in this race, nobody would even be talking about illegal immigration.
I like to clear up
and the problem.
I like to clear up context, and I like to get people to get on the record, because is it true that you joked that you don't need the Hispanic vote as a nominee? If indeed so, how would you win the general election if you?
No, I never said you don't need the Hispanics. I think I'm going to win the Hispanics. I never said that. I will say this, however. When Mitt Romney ran, there was a tremendous millions of people that are Republicans and conservative Republicans and evangelicals and people that I have a great relationship with. They sat home for some reason and they did not vote. You know that. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about millions of people. And had they gotten up and voted for Mitt Romney, he would have won the election.
Yeah.
And people are forgetting about that. Plus, I think me more than anybody else, I'll go across lines. I think I'll have a lot of Democrats. You know, Reagan had Democrats for Reagan. It was a very big group of people and a very big bloc. I think the Reagan Democrats for Trump. I think I will have a lot of Democrats voting for me, far more than any Republican for the last long period of time. Oh. I will say this, and I will say this, very strongly. The Republican conservatives were not energized in the last election. Had they been energized and had they voted, you would have seen victory for Mitt Romney.
And there's lots more to come when it comes to Donald Trump here. Up next, he tells me who he wants to tax, how he will take on China, and if he's changed his mind on campaign fundraisers. Donald Trump says he is the man to reform taxes in this country, but how he plans to do it may surprise you. This is something that some people don't think is a conservative issue that you are that you have weighed in on, and I was surprised actually to hear you say it. I shouldn't be surprised to hear you say anything. But last Friday, when you were in Massachusetts, you said several times that your plan is to increase taxes on the richest Americans, and you especially targeted.
I didn't say that.
Hedge fund managers, though. Okay,
yeah, that's different. There's a big difference. What you're saying is very different. No, I want to create great incentives. I want to reduce taxes. But what I said, the hedge fund guys, I know the hedge fund guys. They're all supporting Bush and Hillary Clinton and some of the other candidates. I won't take their money. I turned down today millions of dollars, fundraisers. They want to have fun. Everybody wants to have fundraisers for me because, you're in first place, according to every poll, and they all want to have fundraisers, right? I turned down millions and millions of dollars where all I have to do is go to somebody's house and have fundraisers. But every time, if I ever do that, I end up with all sorts of, probably connections and do this and do that. I don't want to do it. And part of the reason people are really, I think, generating toward me is the fact that I'm not doing it. But I actually tweeted recently, I said, I feel stupid. I'm turning down millions and millions of dollars. I just hope the voters appreciate it when it comes time to vote, because I'm spending my own money, and it's going to be a lot of money by the time I finish, and I'm turning down all of these people that want me to do fundraisers for myself. Now, you see Bush all over the place. You see Hillary all over the place. You see every one of these guys. Most of their time is consumed by doing fundraisers. Now, every time they do a fundraiser, they're bought and they're sold and they're owned to a large extent, and in some cases completely. I will tell you that.
All right, well,
by the people that are putting up money.
Let
I'm not doing that.
Let me finish the question, because you have proposed that you want to impose tariffs on American companies who put their factories abroad. You also said hedge fund managers. And my question is, do you think that you can win a Republican primary by proposing to raise taxes?
We're losing all our jobs. We're losing all our business. You have a terrible thing happening right now, Don. It's called corporate inversion. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't. What is it?
That's where companies are leaving this country in order to go out to other countries for lower tax rates. Where companies we have $2.5 trillion at least out, where companies have the money out. I have some of it out. We have $2.5 trillion out outside of the country. They can't get the money into this country because the taxes are so onerous that, frankly, with some quick movement and thinking, we could get that money coming into this country, and they'd spend the money in this country. And what they're doing is they're buying small companies, and they're leaving the United States in order to save on taxes and in order to get money that they have sitting out there. It's called corporate inversion, and you should take a look at it, because to me it's a very big thing. You know, it used to be where a company would leave New York for Florida, or they'd leave New Jersey for Texas, or they'd leave another state for another state, right? State to state, it's called. Now companies are leaving the United States for another country.
Okay.
And they're going to Ireland, and they're going to other countries where the tax rates are low. And we're losing tremendous companies, and we're losing tremendous number of jobs. And it's a huge problem. I will be able to solve that problem. You don't have anybody else running that knows what. They don't even know what it is.
But again, you think that you can win a Republican primary by proposing to raise taxes?
I'm not proposing to raise taxes. I'm lowering taxes on the middle class and the upper middle class and the moderately wealthy. I'll be lowering taxes. The middle class is getting clobbered. So that's what.
But isn't that raising taxes on the wealthiest of Americans? That's not raising taxes.
Don, let me explain. You reported it incorrectly. I said these hedge fund guys are making hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're not paying tax, and they're paying very little tax. And if you're somebody that's making $50,000 and $60,000 and $70,000, number one, your returns are so complicated, you have to go to H&R Block or somebody who I want to put out of business, because we have to simplify the tax code. We have to lower taxes, but we have to lower taxes on the middle class, because we're losing our middle class. Yeah. They're getting wiped out.
Okay, as I am interviewing you now, I just got an alert that says stocks start September with a nosedive as the Dow closes nearly 470 points. The market took a tumble again today. More concerns about China, of a slowdown there. Okay. Attacking China is a big part of your campaign message. And
I've been calling this for a long time. I'm telling you, it's a big bubble.
But they've dismissed your attacks as, quote, disturbances. Are you surprised by that?
I don't know what you mean. What I'm saying is a disturbance?
That's what they said, disturbance.
Not a disturbance. I get along great with China. China loves me. I have the biggest banks in the world in my buildings. I mean, they're from China. I do business with China. China knows I know what I'm talking about. Look, China has taken advantage of the United States to a point that you cannot understand. China, it's one of the great thefts in the history of this world, what China's done to they've drained our jobs, they've drained our money, because their politicians are much smarter than our politicians. I will change that around. We will take back jobs, and we will do just fine, and we'll actually have a better. China doesn't even like us. We don't even have a good relationship with China, and they've taken our money, our jobs, our base. They've taken so much from us, and they don't even like us. They don't even respect us. We will turn that around, and you know what? They'll like us better than they do now.
What would you do?
And not only China, there are many other countries.
How would you calm the markets now and keep the economy growing right now?
Well, right now, what you have to do is you need better trade deals, because the trade deals are just absolutely just ripping us left and right. And part of the reason you've seen this tremendous, these tremendous swings in the stock market is because we are just getting hammered by other countries. We're so intricately woven to China and other places that when they have problems, they're going to take us down. And I've been saying this. I believe in free trade. But, Don, we don't have free trade. You need smart people to have free trade. I love the idea of free trade, but it's free trade with us. But when we go to China and we go to Japan, look at the cars that Japan is selling us. We give them practically nothing by comparison. We sell them beef, and they don't want it. I mean, you always read where they're having big protests, farmers over there. They don't want our beef, and they don't want what we sell them, which is all perishable stuff. They sell us millions of cars, and they come pouring out in these massive ships. It has to be fair, Don. Our country is losing its jobs, it's losing its base, it's losing its money. And then on top of everything else, Don, we owe China $1.4 trillion. Think of it. They make a fortune with, and we owe them money. We owe Japan $1.4 trillion. It's the same exact amount. We owe them each $1.4 trillion. With all of the stuff that they do, we owe them money. So
I want to ask you. I want
like
to
a
ask.
magic act.
I want to ask you about, because as I sat and watched last week, and I interviewed the gentleman who owns the car dealerships, who held the fundraiser for you. Now, you said you don't want to be beholden to any donors. Was it a fundraiser?
No,
Wasn't it a fundraiser?
No,
Are you accepting donations?
Let me explain to you what it was. He's a very good guy. He's up in that area in Massachusetts. He wanted to do something for me, and somebody put out a sign, make a contribution toward the cost. By the way, they had 2,000 people. They were serving roast beef and everything else, and somebody put out a sign to defer costs for, I thought it was for him because I assumed he was paying for it. I don't know. What do I know? I'm not involved in that. But they had a thing to defer some costs. The costs were far greater than the money they took in, far greater. Yeah. But that was just to defer some costs. I'm not even going to do it anymore. From now on, I'm going to pay for it. You're talking about peanuts. They're talking about nothing. And now, most of the people came in for free. They had a choice of coming in for free or making a contribution. And the contribution was only to defer some of the costs for him because I didn't think it was fair for him to pay when I heard he was paying. He's a good guy, a very good guy. And that's all that was.
So you're not holding any more fundraisers? You're not
no, I'm not going to do it anymore because it's too complicated. People don't understand what it represents. I mean, if you do something to defer costs, you end up with a story on CNN because CNN was the one that covered that, frankly. And they actually covered it very incorrectly, but these are minor details.
So even though the sign said...
it gets to be, hey, Don, it gets to be too complicated because people don't know the difference between making a contribution to defer costs. I'm just going to pay for the whole thing myself because it's, you get stories that are false stories, and yet I can understand how they can be written, frankly.
All right. So no more fundraisers throughout this campaign?
No, I'm not going to do it.
You're not going to do it?
I have to say this. With all of that being said, many people have formed PACs. I think there's 5 or 6 PACs. I have nothing to do with them.
Okay.
I can't help. I saw 2 guys being interviewed, I think on your network. They were being interviewed. They formed a PAC having to do some PAC that they named, and they said it's for Trump because we love Trump. I never met them. I may never meet them in the future.
Okay.
I can't help if somebody forms a PAC, if they want to go out and do some advertising or do something. I have nothing to do with that. I'm not putting money into it. I have nothing to do with it.
Okay.
But that's the crazy law that we have now. If somebody wants to form a PAC because they love Donald Trump and they think it's important that I get in because I'm going to make the country rich again and make the country great again, I can't help that. So there may be PACs formed. I think there's 5 or 6 PACs already that are formed. And I assume these guys are going to go out and do ads or something, but it has nothing to do with me, Don. You know the law better than me.
Okay.
And purposely, I'm not even supposed to talk to those people, and I don't.
All
now,
right.
I think other people do talk to people having to do with PACs, but I don't.
All right. Just before we move on, though, are you going to accept donations, large donations, small donations, if people want to give you money?
No, the answer is no.
No.
And I've told you that. Now,
That's it.
Small donations. Wait a minute. Wait. Small donations. People sending in $100 and $7 and $9, and we do accept that because they want to invest in the campaign, and it's relative peanuts. But you know what? They want to be a part of it, and I love that. That's not influence. That's not a lobbyist giving me $5 million where I turn down $5 million where they want to put in millions and millions of dollars. That's people that want to invest in the campaign. That I happen to love. I think it's a really good thing, and I think it's a really positive thing. It's a very small amount of money overall, but it's still that kind of money, just because I don't want to have a misunderstanding with you. So, I have a woman send $7 in a long, beautiful note. I have people paying $100 and $200 and $250 and things. That kind of stuff I do like. I think it's a positive. And frankly, I think it's insulting when they send in a check of $10 and $19, and if we send it back, we don't want your money. You want to know the truth? I think it's almost an insult to them.
Yeah, okay.
So that kind of money we do accept, and we like it because we think it's a positive for the campaign.
When we come right back, Donald Trump answers the charge that he uses Twitter to go after people on his, quote, enemies list. I want to get on now to one of your other opponents, and that's Chris Christie. He was on Jimmy Fallon last night, and he was asked about you. Here it is.
So you have Donald Trump now is the lead. He's in the lead of all these polls. Is this a surprise to you? Do you know anything?
No, I completely expected that, didn't you?
No.
Of course, everything he does is fabulous, spectacular, wonderful, amazing.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, fantastic.
Huge.
Yeah.
No, it's the best.
What do you think of his impression of you?
Well, I thought it was fun. He was trying to be cute and funny, and he's a nice guy. I actually like Chris. I've known him for a long time, and he was trying to be cute and trying to be funny. And you know, he's out there pitching. He's trying to get onto the main stage. He's got not a lot of time to do it, and I actually found it to be fun. I like Chris. Yeah. I always have.
Okay, here's what I want to ask you, because you said earlier in the interview, you said, I tweeted something out the other day, and I just want to ask you let me read this, and then I'll ask you the question. This is USA Today. That is an op-ed calling out you, quote, as unpresidential. We'll put the quote up. I don't want to read the whole thing, but it says, are American voters really looking for a president who spends his evening sending out nasty and petty tweets about journalists rather than, say, working his way on how to defeat the Islamic State? And then it goes on. There's a longer statement, but do you ever think, like, when you're about to tweet, like, maybe I shouldn't say that, or is there someone there who says, Mr. Trump, take your hands off the keys, don't do that?
No, not too often. I mean, look, I'll tweet and I have fun with it, and my people, I have more than 4 million on Twitter. I have millions on Facebook. I think I have like 9 million with Instagram and all of these things with them.
They're comparing you to Richard Nixon, though, saying you have an enemies list.
Well, I have a group of people that I don't respect. I have people in your profession that I have great admiration and respect for. And I also have many in your profession, unfortunately, who I know are very dishonest people. So what Twitter does allow me to do is it allows me to reveal those people. In the old days, you weren't able to do that. But it allows me to reveal when somebody is dishonest. And you do have dishonest people in the media, and it's sad. I mean, I've had stories written about me knowingly false stories. I mean, the reporter knew that it was false, and when we called them on it, they actually practically admitted that they knew that what they did was wrong, but they were looking for a headline, or they were looking for... So you have a lot of very dishonest people in the media. At the same time, you have some very fine people. And I would say this with Twitter, with Facebook, with all of that stuff. It gives you, not just me, it gives people a voice. And there's something, I think, very reassuring about that.
As we are doing this interview now, there has been a situation in Illinois with police officers. There was the Dallas police officer, or sheriff's deputy, who was killed last week. Some have said that the climate in this country is lending to police officers being put into more danger. What do you make of that? Do you believe that is true?
Oh, I think the police are in a terrible position. They're such great people, and yes, you do have your bad apples every once in a while, but they're tiny, tiny percentage. And what's happening with the police, when you look at Baltimore, a place I knew well and know well, and you look at what happened on that first night, Don, you covered it very brilliantly. You saw what was going on. The police stood back. I mean, you have to have law and order. You cannot have a situation where the police are afraid to talk to somebody because they're going to be fired, lose their pension, lose their life, lose their house. And what's happening now is the police are some amazing people, but they're afraid to act and they're afraid to do what's right. And people want protection. The people want the protection. So you see it more and more, and the respect is taken away from the police. And that's a very bad thing for the country, and it's a very bad thing for security and safety.
Do you think that, because you talked about the Black Lives Matter ladies who interrupted Bernie Sanders, do you think that that Black Lives Matter, the group, or their rhetoric, has contributed to this at all?
I think it was terrible when they took the microphone away from him. I thought that was a disgraceful situation. I mean, I had a similar type of situation with Mr. Ramos of Univision, and I think it was handled much more professionally, to be honest. And I've actually been given very good reviews, even by people in your profession, because he was out of order. But it ended up being very nice, and we brought him back, and we had a civil. By the time we finished at the end of 3 or 4 minutes, I think it was actually very interesting. We actually seemed to be getting along. But I thought it was terrible that Bernie Sanders allowed that microphone to be ripped out of his hand, because that's essentially what happened. And the people in the audience were going, "What's going on over here? Take the mic back." The people that were listening, they were people that I would say, probably liked him. They couldn't understand how he could allow it. To me, it showed tremendous weakness.
But as it relates to law enforcement and the climate in the country, do you think that Black Lives Matter is dangerous when it, or?
I don't know that. I can't answer that question. Nobody can. Who knows what's going on? All I know is that the police are tremendous people, and yes, you will have some bad ones, as you do in any profession, in any walk of life. But the police are tremendous people. They do overall a tremendous job, and they have to be allowed to do their job.
Thank you, Donald Trump.
Thank you very much, Don.
Up next, reaction to Donald Trump. And CNN has